Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We'll just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it. And on this week's episode, letting the light in and embracing the joy of your inner child.
Yeah.
Don't get scared of that inner child talk.
I know. So much of it is focused on trauma.
Yeah.
But today will be a reminder to let the light in.
Yeah. Let's get into these skin deep cards first.
Okay.
I'll go first.
All right.
Okay. Let's see. What do I do that detracts from our relationship?
I don't know. What do you do that detracts from our relationship? I would say can't think of anything.
Really?
Like you show up here every week so we can have these deep discussions.
Mm-hmm.
You call way more than I do. Anyone. So I think that I can't think of anything you do that detracts from our relationship. You ask questions, you answer questions honestly. I know if I need something, I can call you 100%. Same with my kids. Like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to come up with something, but.
So you're saying I passed.
You are doing great.
I like that you don't have an answer for that.
I really don't. I'm even trying to think of like silly things.
I know. When I read that, I was like, I wonder what she would say.
She's going to stump me. Okay.
All right. What's yours? What's your question?
My question is, what do you love most about our family?
Well, years ago, I would have said that we were all sarcastic and that we all, kind of nipped at each other all the time. But I would say now, probably that we just kind of went into this vulnerability and kind of talking with each other, and we're all, at least a lot of us are coming to our awareness and kind of trying to talk to each other and really fill in the gaps for each other on our childhoods and kind of how we experienced it. I think that's the most beautiful thing. Even with mom and dad, everybody kind of sharing a little bit helps to kind of bring what we're doing here together.
Yeah, I love that. I think that we're all willing to go into some uncomfortable places in order to understand each other more. Yeah. I think that's one of the most important parts. So I know that was your question, but that just made me think about.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah. All
right, so let's get into this letting the light in. Yeah. This was brought up because during therapy last week with Mary Gail, I was, we were talking about how I do a lot of work on reflecting on my inner child and the trauma that I went through, but we don't do a lot of reflecting on the joys of my childhood and who those people were and or who I was at that time. Yeah. And
the joy of you as a child.
Yeah, the joy of me. And I was really having a hard time, thinking of that. And my therapist actually said, well, I can think of a few things. And she brought up, she kind of used a story that it was a trauma story where, when my stepdad, I went to bring him a beer. And when I was about 3-4 years old, maybe about 4 or 5. And I went to bring him a beer because he was out in the patio with his friends and a couple of friends. And I thought, well, I was just, for some reason, mom and dad him and mom were fighting. And I was just trying to make it, a nice and smooth things over. So I thought that his beer, or they were all drinking beer, and I thought it was a little bit low. So I thought, I'll go ask him if he wants a beer. So I went outside and said, hey, Dad, would you like another beer? And he looked at me and he said, don't call me Dad. I'm not your dad. And then he just started laughing. And that just completely shut me down. And that has been like a key point where I've had judgment of my moral or my worth and all that kind of stuff. But Mary Gail said, well, remembering the part of you that was such a good kid that wanted to kind of regulate or kind of ease the mood in the room, and you went and offered a beer and you're being very conscientious and just trying to be a good, kind kid. So I was like, I guess I was. And so it started me on this path of just thinking about the good parts, because so many of us go through and think about and relive and try to bring up and, process all these traumas. Yeah. But we forget to balance that by bringing in some of the joy and remembering who we were as a kid and the joyful parts of it.
Yeah. And I think, the thing is, like, when we were talking about this, I thought, gosh, if we were to talk about this, there's probably a lot of people that are like, I didn't even have any good memories. And that could be true. But the thing that is true about us is that we still have this essence of us as people, as like spirit, as little souls.
Yeah.
We have this essence of us that was true even then. So like yours was that kindness.
Yep.
Right? Or this curiosity, or it made me think about things when I was little too, that I was like, oh yeah, I was like that. I did do that. So it's not just all the things that have happened to us, but who we were or are as children, and what are the things that really kind of lit us up, and what did we remember about being playful, so I thought this was a really good topic because it's true. A lot of what we talk about right now is dealing with, trauma and inner child healing, but it doesn't give us this ability to just celebrate our own light, especially when we're working on our mental health. And there is so much of that. And if you think about wanting to, heal that inner child within you, sometimes, well, I would think that if you're able to recognize the goodness in it, there's even more of this ability to connect with that part of yourself. Because a lot of people, that's really hard for them to connect to themselves as children. But if you can find a way to just connect to that light that was within you, not just the trauma, not just the hard stuff, that might be easier in creating that relationship with that part of yourself, is really to celebrate those parts that were really sweet, Yeah,
because on balance, I've been really pushing on trying to find and pull apart all the threads on why I am the way I am, but not so much focusing on the good parts of back then and realizing who I was or remembering who I was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, recognizing pain is one of the first steps in healing, right? But then, and there's so many benefits in just acknowledging the trauma that you've been through, because it brings a level of awareness on things that you want to work on, and maybe where patterns have started, and why we act the way we act. But we could be missing that really important piece, and just kind of bringing balance, by being able to reflect on the good parts of us. Maybe there weren't a lot of good times, but there's still a good part of each of us that exists.
Yeah. I mean, I've also heard people say not a lot of, I haven't had a lot of trauma, not a lot of bad things have happened to me, but they're, so this might even be helpful just to remember who they were.
Yeah.
As the joy part, as a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Connecting. I just think it's interesting to look at a different pathway to going to your inner child. Cause sometimes when we talk about inner child, people are like, oh, inner child, I'm not doing any of that. That sounds total woo woo, but so there's a resistance. Even for me, it was a resistance, but in hindsight, looking at it now, had I started by looking at the positive parts,
it would have been an easier transition.
It might have been an easier transition. Yeah. And remembering, I mean, just as the simple example of, that trauma that I had with Eddie and bringing out a beer, but remembering, you know what though? What did it take me to even get to that part?
Yeah. Who was that kid?
Who was that kid that was like,
thought,
yeah, bring this jerk, what I mean? Offer him a beer even after he was, basically beating up on my mom and yelling at her and all that stuff that, hours before.
Yeah. There was a kindness.
There was a kindness there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's parts of our our childhood we can look back on with joy, and there's parts that were very hard, but there's value in bringing a balance to that.
Yeah.
So what are the qualities you had as a child besides kindness? What else do you remember about yourself?
You said curious. That's one that's big, is curiosity, because I would always like to take things apart and see how they worked inside, and I would actually be able to put them back together because I was so afraid that if I broke something, I'd get in trouble. A lot of kids can take things apart but not put them back together. But I mastered putting things back together without being noticed.
I think that served you well as an adult also.
I think so. It's what I do. Yeah.
Like just a deep curiosity, wanting to solve a problem, being able to take something apart. I remember for me, one of my sweetest memories as a kid was that I would always sing. So even when nobody was around and I would just be walking, I remember walking through the playground in elementary school, and I had just gotten into a new school because we had moved to Hawaii. And I must have been scared, when you go to a new school. I think I was in like 3rd grade or something.
Okay.
And I remember walking through the playground and I was just singing to myself. So everything that was happening, I would make a song about it. Like, here I am, I'm walking to the swings, and whatever it was. And it would be a song.
It's like a coping mechanism.
It was a coping mechanism. So everything that happened, I would sing it
Okay.
and then it would make me feel better.
Yeah.
Or this like deep love of nature. So if you could just send me out on a hike. I mean, I remember hiking at like 8,
Yeah.
by myself. Now I would never let my kid do that, but I'm grateful that my dad was like, yeah, go ahead. Like,
Yeah.
we're at Otay Lakes, like go take off on this path. And now it terrifies me like, oh my God, I walked out there. But, there was like just love of nature and trees and all of that. And thinking about how innocent that was, I wasn't afraid. I just wanted to go do these things and explore. So like that creativity, that exploration of a child was just such a sweet place.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's something really nice about connecting with that part of ourselves.
Yeah. I heard something about kids and creativity. It's like before you can talk, you can, before you can read, you can sing, or before you can talk, I can't even remember exactly what it was, but it was basically talking about how when you're a kid, you're just so creative. And before you can, the moment you can walk, you can start to dance. You know what I mean? It was just a progression of just happiness as a kid.
Yeah, we're not self-conscious either. There's a period where we're not really self-conscious. We're just feeling our way through life.
Yeah, because before the age of 7, we're operating on imagination and creativity.
Yeah, we're in a theta brainwave state.
Yeah. And then you start thinking about the trauma start kicking in, and
Or this isn't good. I have to shut myself down this way, or I don't do this, or I don't do that. But before that, we just kind of felt our way through the world.
Yeah.
I think what I'd like to do is just offer maybe just a quick activity or a visualization for people. So even if you're driving, this is not a meditation. So even if you're driving or you're sitting, is just take a minute, and I want you to just take a few breaths, and I want you to just imagine yourself as a child in your happiest state. Right? Just take a minute. Your happiest state. What did you love to do? What was that? How did you feel? What brought you joy? Was it a pet? Was it a friend? How can you bring more of this light into your present self? Yeah. Like just bringing back some of those things that brought you joy, being able to bring those back. It's not always just about focusing on trauma and focusing on the things that are hard that we're trying to heal from. I think this is actually another gateway to be able to connect with that part of yourself. Maybe to deepen the healing, but maybe also just to be able to reconnect with your own sense of creativity, your own sense of joy before, the world got hard.
Yeah, I remember going to a retreat, and one of the things that they said to do was similar to this, and think about something that you did as a kid that brought you joy, and choose an activity now, and maybe do it with your own kids if you've got them, and play.
Oh, yeah.
And so mine was video games. How many hours the Nintendo didn't have save. You had to leave it on and running and put a fan on it so it didn't overheat.
Oh, man.
And, and all of that because you'd stay up for hours at a time and just play, and Zelda write maps on a page and remembering the rooms to go in. And that was so much fun and camaraderie between us as siblings. Like, oh yeah, go this way. And Super Mario was the same thing. You can jump here and portal there. And then the idea was to take it and do it now. And so my assignment was basically do that with my kids and go play video games with my kids. I had so much fun because I started to play some of the games I played, like Street Fighter and Tekken.
Oh my gosh,
from way
Street
back.
Fighter.
Now it was fun for the first
that.
10 minutes until they got good enough to then start whooping me. And then it was like, dude, I'm still like just smashing the buttons, and they've got this, choreography of the thumbs that just annihilate me, and they're doing all these combos. I was like, you don't even know how to play. How are you beating me?
Yeah.
And as soon as they got to it, but before that part, it really just kind of
like brought a sense of play and fun.
Yeah, it brought a sense of play because, so often we're we're just so busy into work and we're serious about everything that we forget to play. Is specifically with the thing that you did as a kid that made you just lose yourself.
Yeah.
And
lose time.
When I did that with Aiden and Logan, oh man, it was so much fun. And it really did lift a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Just knowing. And somehow I felt like I connected with that inner part of me that's been yearning to play again.
And with them.
And with my kids. Yeah.
I remember, one thing that we probably couldn't redo again now, but I remember when you and I were little, I was probably like 13 or 14, and we would do prank calls.
I remember in Hawaii, we used to do that.
You remember the Jerky Boys?
Yes, I do.
Like they had a whole channel about prank calling people, and
Yeah.
we thought it was the funniest thing.
Yeah.
That's probably
We did it before the
probably
Jerky
sarcasm.
Boys.
Yeah, I know.
We did that, before, because I didn't see the Jerky Boys till I was like 15 in the early 90s.
Yeah, that's right.
And this was in the 80s, like 85, 84.
Oh man, I remember we would call up people. This is when you didn't have caller ID.
Oh, yeah.
So they couldn't call you back. And we'd say, is your refrigerator running? We're like, hey, this is so-and-so. Is your refrigerator running? And they'd be like, yeah. I was like, you better go catch it.
As a
We'd
kid,
laugh.
we thought that was hilarious. Some adults are like, what the hell?
Yep. Is this Al's donkey farm? You remember that?
Yeah.
And we're like, no, I could have swore I was talking to a jackass.
I just remember that one.
We couldn't probably do that again now, with
Yeah.
technology, but there was a certain sense of fun and play. I think that was, yeah.
So getting back to doing those things.
Not that, but
Yeah, not that specifically, but maybe finding something that you did as a kid.
yeah.
And recreating that or doing it for yourself or with kids or with a friend.
Yeah.
Really,
You know
does
what I
open up
used to
some
love
light.
was coloring, like coloring in a coloring book. I'm excited when I see my granddaughter Sloan because I'm like, do you want to color? And she'll tell me what pages I can color, but not her favorite pages.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, man, we used to sit for hours and just color, and there's just so much fun. I mean, now we have the adult coloring books, but little things like that, you can just bring a sense of losing yourself in something that is just playful.
Creativity.
Yeah, creativity.
Yeah.
Being able to bring that back into your life. I like that. The other thing we were talking about, because we always, think about like different tools we can use for healing. And one of the things that someone was
With Jay Shetty. Yeah, Jay Shetty.
you were talking about writing your own autobiography.
Yeah, he mentioned one of the things he does with clients is have them write an autobiography and not to print. You could if you're good enough or if you want to. But really, in a sense, rewriting your life story and starting from your earliest memories that you can remember, the good, the bad, all of them through, and just writing those all out.
Yeah.
Taking your time with it and really as if you were writing it for somebody to read, I guess. But
yeah, mainly for your own self-reflection.
yeah, just for your reflection. Yeah.
One of the things I have clients do that someone could use this as like a scaffolding is to do like a life timeline. So you start, from birth to now.
Yeah.
And then you just start to map out by year, by age, the most important events, whether they were good or, hard or whatever, or, times you got a job or different relationships that really affected us and shifted us, is to write down a timeline first.
Yeah, that makes it, because you probably would do that if you're writing an autobiography or a book.
Yeah, if you were going to do
Beginning,
an
middle, end,
assignment,
yeah.
you'd have to do like the summary or the outline, So you write an outline by just doing a life summary review of a timeline, and then just take it and start, to create the stories around it. And I think that starts to open up like your mind and being able to look back and really notice, the things that were challenging, but the way you came through it.
Yeah.
And then what are the things that you really enjoyed? And one of the reasons you would do this, right, is to really gain perspective on the life that you've lived, but also looking at how do you want to do the rest of it,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's important. Sometimes people have you write your autobiography, but I've had other workshops I've been in where they have you write your eulogy. And that's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah.
Is to be like, write your eulogy. Who are you? Who were you? And being able to like live that, eulogy out, or being able to look at like, okay, what's the rest of my life going to look like? What do I want to be the highlights or the big shifts or whatever, what are the patterns? Like looking back at your own timeline is being able to see, you start to reflect on the patterns. How do you notice how you've handled challenges and joys throughout your life?
Yeah.
And I think a big thing is like really writing without any judgment, just letting it go.
Yeah. Let it flow. It's not about perfection. It's about reflection.
Yeah. Explore the highs, explore the lows.
And I think this adds balance that we're talking about. That's why I was thinking about it, because I've so much focus on the trauma part, but writing an autobiography gives the complete, viewpoint.
And it's not just like a timeline review of all the hard stuff.
Yeah.
It's also the good stuff, right? So yeah, I think that there is that balance there. And it is something we often talk about as trauma, but we don't often talk about like that light within the inner child, being able to bring both online, giving equal space to both, not just the bad. Like we're not just constantly in a state of healing. What if we were in we were in a state of just connecting with your heart, being able to connect with that essence of yourself that's existed the whole time?
Yeah, I find myself almost fatigued by doing so much inner work.
Yeah.
That, and especially these last 2 years, I've just been nothing but focusing on the trauma parts.
Mm-hmm.
And when my therapist said this, I was like, wow, like I really have not, I enjoy life, but I think I had, definitely had a bunch of challenges, but I really feel like I never really focused on, there's been so much positive things that have happened also, because I've got plenty of great stories on top of all the bad stories.
Yeah, I think there is a balance that I don't really hear people talk about. I think there's a lot of like focus on what are your triggers and what are your traumas, and absolutely that's the first step I think in healing, is being able to recognize that you have something that's called a trigger. Well, and that's probably from a trauma.
Sometimes I don't feel like sharing the positive things with other people because it feels like, I don't know, I have that worthiness issue where it feels like I'm
You feel like you're bragging or boasting?
Yeah, I think, in some ways, I think that that's an initial response internally. Why I might not, because we're talking about autobiography and writing stuff and actually just thinking to ourselves. But I was thinking outwardly, I don't really talk about the positive things with my friends and family either.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I think for the same reasons why I focus on trauma. You know what I mean? It's what's interesting. That's why people watch, car crashes or, like a racetrack, because they want to see something crash. It's the exciting
it's like
part.
that what we were talking about before, like that nervous system regulation is always like revved. So maybe that's where we're kind of conditioned to look at all of the negative in some way. But how does that balance out if, you don't get to recognize like there was, it's not just about like the accomplishments. It's also about like who you are as a person. What was your personality like? What were the good parts? Because a lot of what we're on is, this hero's journey.
Yeah.
Right? What does that look like throughout? There's been challenges, there's been overcoming, there's been struggles, there's been celebration, but, being able to reflect back on all of it. And then, thinking about how you want to look forward then, right? What parts of your inner child do you want to bring into your adult life?
Yeah, the good parts, yeah.
That kindness, that curiosity.
Well, because, that story that I told in the beginning, I recognize in a pattern there that it has affected me on several levels, which, my worthiness, when I went out and asked him if he wanted a beer, and then he shut me down and told me never to call him dad because he's not my dad. It just made me like, I prefer not to cold call people because I'm afraid of rejection. It's changed how I react. But going back to that story and seeing the positive side where I wasn't afraid before that, I was pretty young, but I was brave enough to be nice and do that. But now later on in life, I recognize that pattern, but that part of me was still true back then.
Yeah. It's also true.
It's still true now.
Yes.
It's just been kind of suppressed, I think, because of...
So is that the part of your inner child that you want to bring back into your adult life more often? Like consciously bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, not be tied to an old story. I like that. Well, I think today we've explored how healing just isn't about the shadows. It's about reconnecting us with joy and light we once had as children.
Yeah.
And reflecting on these parts of ourselves can be as powerful as working with trauma. Like for sure.
Yeah. How has it been powerful for you to think about that? I mean, what does it seem like to you as we're talking about this now? I know this is a kind of a new topic, but thinking about the joyful parts.
You know what? I think for sure it's become easier for me to like connect with that part of myself. I don't think I've been consciously thinking about that's what I was doing. But as I worked through a lot of my old like hurts and pains and the way that I would look at the world and realizing, oh, that was actually a trauma response, it's made it easier for me to connect back with the joy. Like I know now when I'm out in nature why I appreciate it so much. And I can be out there and be like, I remember when I was little and I would just walk with in the woods. And
that's a connection to that.
And I feel
light.
that same connection. Or when I'm doing something in the house and I start singing, and Armando laughs at me all the time. Because even when there's no music on, he's like, you're singing again.
So you've been doing it. Yeah.
I've been doing it my whole life. And now I kind of look at it like, oh, that I used to do that when I was a kid. And it brings like a sweetness, to that part.
During Transcendence, they had one of the meditations was thinking about a time of extreme joy in your life and then connecting it to a knuckle. Remember that?
Oh, and like anchoring it in.
Anchoring it in. So like if you have, like we did that practice earlier where you think about your most joyful point in it as a child. But then while your eyes are closed and thinking about that, if you're driving, don't close your eyes. But thinking about that and then maybe finding one of the knuckles on your hand and squeezing that. I happen to use one that I have like arthritis in because it's one that's pains. And so instead of it being a pain thing, I rub on it. But then I remember that is a trigger for me to remember the joyful part, that memory, and get back to that part where I'm feeling great and all of that. So just finding a way. They called it knuckling, right? So
let's go over that again. So if you think of a really powerful or like a really peaceful, joyful memory as a child, mine would be singing.
Yeah.
Right. And I can close my eyes and just pull up that memory and let it just kind of fill me up. Like just remember the feeling of that. And maybe even watching myself as a child do it and think about like, wow, that's so sweet. It's really cute.
And trying to get that to grow and expand.
And just grow and expand it like a light that you're turning on with a little dial. Turn it up, turn it up, turn it up. And then push on one of your knuckles and just kind of anchor that feeling in the knuckle into that memory.
Yes.
And so whenever you need to pull up that memory again, just push down on that knuckle and just feel it reemerge.
Yeah. Relighting that light in your inner child.
Yeah. Bringing them back home. Bringing them back home. I like that. So a couple things is think about writing your autobiography and just really bringing back in more of the memories of who you were in essence as a child. Of course, it may be hard to figure out to remember, great memories as a child. Maybe it was a hard childhood. But there's still an essence of you that is just this kindness, sweetness, or, curiosity or firiness, whatever
that
is
for you. Yeah.
Just allow yourself to be with that and to turn it up and to, bring it back into your adult life. How can you bring that more back into your adult life now? So I like it. And, remember, healing is about wholeness. It's about accepting the full spectrum of your experiences, not just the bad, not just the good, but just that balance of them. And honoring both the struggles and the joys that make you who you are. So thank you for tuning into this episode. We hope today's conversation inspired you to remember the light of your inner child. And if you found this episode helpful, feel free to share it with someone who might need to hear this message today.
Yeah.
Go deeper.
Yeah, go deeper. Be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.